Thank you, Mr. President. So we've heard a lot about the minority party being opposed to school choice and vouchers. And I want to push back on that as someone that is a strong proponent of charter schools to say that is factually not true, because public charter schools are a form of school choice. What we do have a problem with is sending our tax dollars to institutions without any accountability. We've heard reports out of Arizona where folks have brought diamond rings and lingerie with the money that they get from these vouchers. But to speak specifically about this bill, I want to point out a very important flaw. First off is that we are getting well ahead of our skis in terms of this voucher that's coming from the federal government. They are still in this moment requesting public comment on this very law. And so what that means is there are 3,000 comments right now waiting for them to consider. And this is just an example of one of them that is 30 pages long. So here we are in Georgia passing a bill to say how we're going to execute this law before the federal government even puts forward their guidelines. In addition to that, the majority party argues that this is about helping kids who need this. The gentleman from the 37th mentioned the costs of private schools. And I want to point out that he said between $15,000 and $20,000. We don't even scratch the surface if we're trying to support kids who truly need this. We give them $6,500. And now the federal government is willing to send $1,700. That still, if you do the math, does not help the kids whose families who truly cannot afford to send their kids to a Woodward Academy. In addition to that, when you look at these guidelines that are already in existence, if you were to look at the folks who qualify, folks in Randolph County who make $117,000 per year would be able to access these funds. Folks in Forsyth County, where the gentleman from the 27th represents, will be able to get access to these dollars, and they can make up to $459,000 per year. So when folks say the minority party is opposed to school choice, we are not opposed to choice. We are opposed to just free money being thrown out to folks who do not need it. We are for educating students and improving academic performance. The gentleman from the 27th mentioned that there are many public schools that are accredited and their scores are subpar. My question to him would be, well, what is the scores of the students who go to private schools? Disclaimer, we don't know. There is no accountability on these dollars that are sent to these private schools. And so I'm going to use this as a moment to do a shameless plug. I actually have a bill for that. Senate Bill 493 was introduced to put some accountability measures on schools that are accepting kids on the Promise Scholarship. If we are going to give money, public money, to students to go to private schools, we should expect to see some results from those schools. Right now, we don't know how those students are performing. There was also mention of the special needs scholarship. Once again, money is given without any accountability. There are parents that have taken advantage of the special needs scholarship, and they have complained that their private school is not honoring their child's IEP. So, if we're going to give money to students who want to go to private schools, we should be expecting some results and some opportunity to know that they are being successful. There are currently 2 million public school students in this state. This bill has a major flaw, and I would like to believe that it's a flaw and not on purpose. In line 72, it says qualified school or program means a non-public elementary or secondary school. The federal law does not have that requirement. This bill is excluding 1.85 million students because right now the federal law actually allows public school students to have access to this $1,700. So we are going further than the federal government and saying, you know what? We don't want our public school students to have access to this money, but yet we want to give students school choice. So what we're saying is we only want school choice and options for 185,000 kids. Well, let me correct that, 150,000 kids that are in private schools right now. That is a major problem. That is why we need to slow down. We need to think about what we're doing and not get ahead of the federal government. Whether you agree with this or not, I would hope that you would agree that we should not be excluding students that the federal government is not excluding. The federal government is saying, hey, we want to give this to all kids. But what Georgia is saying, like, no, we want to go a step further and just allow it for a select few. That is a major problem in this bill. Finally, I want to address the fact that, folks have mentioned that this is about school choice is personal. It is a personal decision for a child to be sent to a school and a parent to make that decision. But we also have to be smart about how we're doing it. It is our responsibility to make sure our students are learning. When we have 30% of kids reading on grade level and 70% not, I would believe that it's not just in our public school, folks. This happens in our private schools too. And so if we're going to send money to private schools, we should know how our students are learning and what their academic outcomes are. And so it's not just that we just reflexively want to be against giving parents options. We want to be able to give options to the parents who truly need them. And I would argue that someone making $459,000 does not need additional government funds. The ones who need it are the ones whose families are struggling to make ends meet. And so I strongly oppose this bill because what we're doing is we're saying to 1.85 million students who the federal government has said, you know what, they can have access to these. Georgia is saying, nah, we just want 150,000 kids to have access to it. That is horribly flawed. So those public school students and their families who are listening, I want you to take note that our majority is saying that you should not have access to funds that your federal government is saying you should have access to. And with that, Mr. President, I yield the well.